Hey everyone, welcome to my library. My name is Melissa, and today I am doing a highly anticipated video and a very delayed video. It is the last day of March, and I am officially doing my best books of 2022. So if that says anything about how chaotic my year was that year and how chaotic the beginning of this year has been, yeah, that's saying something, I guess. But last year was a momentous year for me. That's when my son was born, my first son, my first baby, in April. So his first birthday is coming right around the corner. It's so crazy. But yeah, so I was obviously in the middle of planning for that last year at this time, and then just busy with a baby for the rest of the year. So anyways, however, stats wise, I'm actually very proud of my stats. I know that I am not a large number reader. I've never been that way. And that's just something I'm totally fine with. The amount of books I read, I still think is a lot, especially for everything else going on. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of it. I read 46 books last year. And yeah, that's a solid number for me. And I think I had the goal in Goodreads of reading 45. So I just very barely topped over that. And then I counted how many I listened to, and I listened to 17. So I read physically more than I listened, which is normal for me. I actually get through audiobooks slower than I do physically, because I really only listen to them when I'm getting ready in the morning or when I'm driving to work, but I only go into work once a week usually. So anyways, yeah, those are the basic stats for my year. And then I have the 10 books, my top 10 books of 2022 laying here. And we're going to go in order. I always rank mine in order. I don't have a hard time doing that. I don't know why, but like I always know what my number one is, and then I just kind of work my way back, and it works out. So yeah, but we're actually going to start with number 10 and work our way to number 1. So number 10 is a huge book, one of the biggest books I read last year, and it is part of a series that I absolutely love and will be no surprise to anyone, but that is Troubled Blood by Robert Galbraith. So this is number 5 in the Cormoran Strike series, and this is the most recent book that was out prior to the book that just barely came out, The Ink Black Heart, which I'm actually currently reading. So yeah, this is a super popular one though. I think a lot of people's favorites is this one so far. It was a super fascinating mystery. It was a cold case, so a death that happened in the 70s that they're trying to track down what happened to this woman that seemingly disappeared within 5 minutes of when she left her workplace. And so it's all about this doctor who they're trying to find what happened to her. And it takes you down so many different paths, so many different angles. And it also, the reason why I read this series and why I love it so much is the romance between Strike and Robin is iconic. It is the most slow burn of slow burns. I'm talking like minuscule movement happening, but for some reason I am so into it. Like when the moments happen, they just hit, and it's so good. So anyways, yeah, I'm still waiting for like some sort of spark to like kick into gear, but it'll happen, I'm sure. I know J.K. Rowling this is her pen name for this series, but J.K. Rowling is planning a 10-book series So obviously that's why. I mean, this is only number 5, so we have a long ways to go. But yeah, I really enjoyed the story of this one. And actually a different number in the series ranks higher than this, that I enjoyed even more just story-wise. So, but yeah, I did enjoy this one a lot. Every single book on this list I gave 5 stars to. And actually, as I was going through my Goodreads, of the 46 books, I mean, this is a quarter of them essentially. I mean, a little bit less than a quarter, but these were all the books that I ended up giving 5 stars to. Like, none did I leave off. So that worked out really well. But anyways, yeah, so that is the first book in this list, number 10. Okay, number 9 is actually a novella, and I never read novellas, guys. I never read short stories or novellas, so this was a surprise for me. But it was one that was recommended to me so many times since everyone knows I love a good slow burn. And that is A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. This is obviously a Christmas themed novella, and it's actually a Victorian era historical, and it's a romance, and it's between these two characters that were actually, they start as dating at the very beginning of courting at the very beginning of the story, but then they've kind of hit a clash. They've hit a point in their relationship that's kind of an ultimatum where they're trying to decide whether they're going to stay together or not, and they realize something needs to budge, and it's all about what the hero ends up doing to try to really save the day and also just get to know her better. They really didn't, it's made very clear at the very beginning of the book, the novella, that they don't really know each other, that they've just kind of gone through the motions of courting at this time. And anyways, it was full of Christmas vibes. It was full of just this like mystical, magical setting, and I just loved it. I loved it. And I definitely want to read more Mimi Matthews. I actually attempted, basically right after I read that, I attempted to read another book of hers, just to kind of like, you know, ride with the momentum. Unfortunately, though, I DNF'd it, and I feel so bad, but I honestly don't want to give up on her. The one that I DNF'd was The Siren of Sussex, if you guys have read more of her books. However, I have, she like was doing this sale on Instagram, well, promoting it, where some of her books were free on Kindle, and so I bought some of those books, and those are the ones that are actually more intriguing to me. They're like from a different publisher. They're historical, they're clean, and they look really good. I think the first one is called The Work of Art or something like that. If you guys have read that, let me know if it's any better, or if it's, I think it's a different vibe. Like, The Siren of Sussex is printed by Berkeley, and I don't know, it just didn't jive with me. So I'm not giving up on her though, because that novella was so good. So yeah, I'm gonna try more. Okay, so the next book is one I've touted its praises a lot, so I think you guys probably know what it is. But this Calder Range by Janet Daly. So this is the first book in the Calder series by her, and basically how I've described this series and how I've got people to try it is by saying, like, if you like Yellowstone, and specifically 1863, which is like the prequel to Yellowstone, you will love this series, this book, because this is all, it honestly is like exactly that. It's about this man who wants to form an empire in Montana, a cattle empire. And so he moves from where he's at in Texas with his fiance, whose name is Lorna. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Let's see. Lorna, that's right. Her name's Lorna, and his name is Chase. And they end up hightailing it basically to Montana with a big cattle company. And it's about their journey getting there, and then also establishing themselves there, and getting to a place in their marriage where they are happy. It's actually kind of like they start off getting married, and then it's how they fall in love. So it's an interesting take that way too. But honestly, it was just so packed full of adventure and characters, besides these two that you get to love, and I just loved it. It's very Lonesome Dove-esque, but in a more condensed form, and with a lot more, romance packed in there as well, because this is obviously supposed to be a Western romance. But I just loved it. I ate it up. It was everything I wanted at that time, that vibe. And I've continued in the series and continued to enjoy these books. This one is the only one I've given 5 stars to so far in the series, but I plan to continue. I have more books on my shelves waiting to be read. So yeah, I so enjoyed this. If this sounds anything Yellowstone-esque that you're kind of looking for, if that's kind of a vibe you want, definitely try this series. I highly recommend it. So there's this one. Okay. Number 7 is a classic, and I think it's the only classic on this list. Yeah. So, I mean, I can't have a favorites list. I feel like I think I fit in a Jane Austen every single year. But yeah, the Jane Austen book I read last year for the first time ever is Northanger Abbey, and fell in love, of course. I mean, who's shocked? This is definitely a different vibe from other Jane Austens, because this is her parody on a Gothic novel. And so it was just full of humor and full of like kind of it's realizing its own humor, I guess. Like the heroine thinks that she is destined to fall in love, and she treats herself as a heroine in a novel, and it's kind of, so it's got that kind of ironic aspect to it, that parody, and I actually really enjoyed it. And yeah, I just love this story. I mean, it took me, I think, 3 days to read because it's super short as well. And I love this little edition I have. I have a bunch of these. I mean, all of Jane Austen's main works in this edition, and just think they're pretty. So sorry if you can hear the really loud airplane above, but yeah, so I really enjoy this. I only have one more Jane Austen left to read, like of her 6 prominent novels. I only have one left to read that I've never read, and that's Mansfield Park. So yeah, I've attempted to read it actually before, but it just was not the right time. So I need to attempt it again. But yeah, that's my last one. But I enjoy Jane Austen so much. Pride and Prejudice is my favorite book of all time. I actually recently reread that. I listened to it. I think I told you guys about this, but yeah, I listened to it, narrated by Rosamund Pike, and it was sublime. It was so good. But yeah, I did read this physically and just loved it. So there's this one. That's number 7. Okay, number 6 is a family saga, and it is, I would say, a modern classic. And that is The Light Years by Elizabeth Jane Howard. So this is Downton Abbey in a book, pre-World War. It's so good. It's so British. Like the way they talk in this is just so, like I loved that part of it, specifically the dialogue. Like it just completely immerses you in that world. This is all about a family that, basically the inner workings of the family and the servants, and how they're kind of in denial of the political upheaval that's happening outside of the world, of their world, and kind of how it all comes to hit them in unexpected ways, and how they deal with it. And then this is the first one in the Cazalet Chronicles series, so it's gonna continue from here with the war, you know, starting to rev up. And I'm sure, you know, all these different characters are gonna start growing up or start moving out. There's a bunch of children in this book, and I'm gonna guess they're gonna grow up and then, you know, have their different stories to tell. But yeah, I loved it. And it actually has a forbidden romance between a daughter of the family and her lover, who is also a woman. And that was really interesting, a really interesting portrayal. This was printed in 1990, so I mean, still for even that time, like I feel like that was an interesting portrayal that was not featured much during that time, and also in like a positive light. It wasn't all negative. Like you're rooting for this couple the whole time throughout this book. But anyways, yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to continue. I'm so sad I haven't, because I read this earlier in 2022 and I just never got around to the second one. So it's on my list. I want to read it soon because I know I'm going to love it. So yeah, the next one is definitely on the table for sure this year. So there's this one. Okay, so number five, I don't have a physical copy of, because I actually gave it away to a friend, but, that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. And I actually listened to this on audio. I got it from my library because I heard the audio was really good, and I can definitely also say that it was amazing. Like, I loved the narrator for this book. So good. The narrator makes or breaks a audiobook, as everyone knows, and I've been very picky about my audiobooks recently and only want like the best of the best. And I can say that this one is truly one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to, but also one of the best books just in general. I know this is also maybe considered a modern classic, but just so touching, moving. It's truly just like a work of art, and how it was written, so original. It's about a little girl, Liesel, who is orphaned and gets basically adopted by this family who ends up in Germany. They're in Germany, and she ends up being part of the Hitler Youth program, and then they end up housing a Jew in their house, like obviously hidden, and she gets to befriend him, and it's kind of all told through a children's perspective on what's going on, and just how terrible the world was at that time. And anyways, I mean, I loved so many of the characters in this story. They just, you know, make you want to just die for any of them, to be honest. Specifically though, Papa, the main father figure in the book, like, he has my heart. He was so precious. Liesel had nightmares every night for like, I want to say a year, and you know, she'd wake up screaming, crying, and he was always there to like comfort her and to read to her. And oh my, yeah, an amazing story. I'm sure most of you have read it already, but I finally got around to reading it, and yeah, it captured my heart. I loved it so much. Still need to watch the movie. I know that it's an amazing movie, I'm sure, with Jeffrey Rush as Papa. Like, I can't imagine it not being so good. But yeah, I just haven't gotten to it yet, so that needs to happen. But yeah, so that's number 5. Okay, number 4 is Last Christmas in Paris by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb. Another Christmas book, actually, which is weird because I actually don't read that. I wouldn't say that I read that many Christmas books. Maybe I get around to like one a year or something, but yeah, I mean, already 2 on this list. But yeah, so this is a historical fiction book set in World War I, and it's in epistolary form, so it's set in read to you in letters, the storyline, and multiple perspectives, obviously, but there's a romance that happens super slow burn throughout the whole book. And it starts with them just being friends. Actually, he's her brother's best friend, so it's that relationship. And she ends up just writing to him as a friendship kind of thing to keep him going as he's in the war, as he's a soldier, and then it blossoms from there. And yeah, that part was the part that got me. Like, it's so romantic. I love this book for that. But also, like, the main female character, what is her name? I just forgot it. Evie. She was so strong and so resilient and motivating for those men that were in the war, and then also on the home front with her own family. And she tried in every way to help with the war effort, and I just loved her character specifically. So lots to admire about this book. I loved it so much. Definitely give it a shot. I actually listened to this book on audio as well, and it's multicast narration, so depending on who's writing the letter, obviously, is the narrator, and I loved that part of it too. Like, the narrators they had for them were perfect. So yeah, so many things to love about this book, and I highly recommend to any historical fiction fans out there. You will not be disappointed by this book. I actually recommended it to my mother-in-law. She reads a lot of historical fiction. She loved it too. She was just singing its praises to me after she read it and thanked me so much for recommending it. So yes. Okay, there's this one. Okay, now we're down to the last three. Number 3 is, I've alluded to prior to this, but that is Lethal White by Robert Galbraith. So this is number 4 in the Cormoran Strike series. And I love this one even more than number 5. Because of the story and the mystery involved. It was so good. And then also, it was a lot more like a political intrigue. Like, they have to fake an identity to get involved in the to like understand a politician's movements, because he's kind of come under their investigation. And so it's kind of like that scene, which I enjoyed a lot, because Robin specifically has to go undercover, and it kind of just features, this one is a lot more a feature, I feel like, on Robin and some of the PTSD she has from various events that have happened in her life, terrible things that have happened to her. And so I just really appreciated the rawness of that, and the internal struggle she has this whole time in this book. And yeah, I mean, there were a lot of different very emotional scenes with her and Strike as well that I loved, and you know, obviously ate up. And so anyways, that's what made me really love this book, and just a tad bit more than Troubled Blood. But yeah, so that is number 3 in the list here. Okay, number 2 is a historical mystery, and I don't have a copy of this book because, you guys, this series is exorbitantly expensive on Amazon. Like, I can't justify the price for a new book from, I don't know, I mean, I think they're like $27. That's crazy to me. Almost $30 for like a book that's this big. Anyways, like, I could go on, but so I don't own physical copies of these books, and I'm very sad about it, but it's whatever. That's number 2. So sorry, it's A Peculiar Combination by Ashley Weaver. So this is the first book in the Electra McDonald series. Honestly, my favorite historical mystery, or just mystery series besides Cormoran Strike, I've read ever. I love it so much. Like, and it's such a new series, and that's what's like really making me so, not annoyed, but just, it sucks that I have to wait for every book to come out because I'm caught up now. there's only 2 out so far. So yeah, this is the first one. And basically the story is, it's about Electra McDonald, who is a professional locksmith. She's a code breaker, and she is not exactly in line with the law when she does some of her hired jobs. And she actually gets caught in a hard place, basically, with her uncle, who also does this work. And she gets caught by the police and gets in custody in the police, and actually gets offered an ultimatum. And they tell her that either she can serve time or she can help with the war effort and use her skills that way. And so she accepts their conditions, and she ends up being not recruited, but a captain, an officer in the army, ends up kind of taking her and trying to use her for his operations. And then what swiftly follows is a super slow burn romance between the two as they're trying to crack this case to help. I can't remember exactly what the mystery is, but somehow there's some safe they have to break that's in this mansion, and it has something that they need to help with this code that they need to decipher. I don't know. I can't remember. You guys, it's been a long time since I read it, but I mean, the thing that I loved the most was the romance, and I like their chemistry was electric. Like, it was so good. And Ashley Weaver's writing, I loved it as well. Completely immersive. She wrote great characters, and it was just utterly charming, and I just loved it. And then I swiftly read, once the second book came out that year, I read A Key to Deceit as well by her in the same series. Loved it too, so good. But something about this first book, just like the way it was distinguished in my historical mystery reading so far, it just, yeah, it was so good. So yeah, and I recommend honestly to anyone who likes historical fiction in general, because it has a lot of that. It goes into depth about the war and about how they were using these spies and these different tactics to get information. And it's set in the UK, and yeah, loved it. So there's that. Okay, and then the final and favorite book of 2022 for me, which I mentioned before in my most recent video, but I will sing its praises again happily. And that is Bluebird by Genevieve Graham. Yes, this was my favorite book of 2022. So good. This is basically how do I say this? It's a Peaky Blinders-esque story post-war. So it's post the First World War, set in Canada, because Genevieve Graham is actually a Canadian author, and she writes Canadian historical fiction. And so, yeah, I can't wait to get to more of her books, because that's such a fascinating niche of a, section to write in, and something that, not a lot of other people are doing. And so I admire her for that. But yeah, this follows two people, one a soldier in the army who comes back and basically starts this bootlegging business with his brother. And they start making a whiskey that they call the Bailey Brothers whiskey. And then Grace is the war nurse who she met him on in the war hospital, helping his brother. And then, the sparks flew then, but then they end up being in the same town after the war, and kind of rekindle that. And then it's kind of how she gets involved, but kind of reluctantly gets involved, and what ends up happening with all of that as their business starts booming, and what happens with her and him. And I just loved it so much. And yeah, this was definitely my favorite book of 2022 for so many reasons. But yeah, I highly recommend and hope you guys can pick this up. So yeah, that is my favorites of 2022, you guys, finally. I'm so sorry this is so late in coming out. As you can tell, there's a lot of hustle and bustle happening in my house now. Sam just woke up from a nap, so I better go. But yeah, please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, or if you could just tell me your ultimate favorite book of 2022, if you can remember. I'm sure you can. But yeah, I would love to hear. And with all that being said, please like and comment and subscribe if you want to see more from me. And I will see you guys in another video. Bye!